Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
March 1603. Elizabeth first sat on cushions in her chamber, refusing her bed. She was convinced that if she lay down, she would never rise again. For 45 years, she had ruled England with intelligence, strategy, and iron will. Now, at 69, her body betrayed her. Chronic illness, tremors, and decades of lead makeup had left her fragile, pale, and trembling. Her attendants watched in silent dread. Elizabeth's presence remained commanding, but moments of confusion and weakness punctuated her otherwise deliberate movements. She spoke with authority, issuing orders and observing her household with the sharp mind that had guided England through decades of political turmoil. Yet, beneath the surface, fear gnawed at her, a quiet terror that no crown could shield. Courtiers whispered among themselves. The Queen's refusal to lie down was unlike anything they had witnessed. Some suspected it was stubbornness. Others believed it was superstition, a belief that surrendering to her bed would surrender her life itself. Hours turned to days as she remained seated, silent and unyielding, while those around her waited for the inevitable. Even in frailty, Elizabeth maintained her rituals. Lead-white makeup concealed the effects of age. Gowns of crimson and gold projected authority, and her gestures retained the dignity of a monarch accustomed to command. Yet every movement betrayed the limits of her body, the tension between the legendary Virgin Queen and the mortal woman before them. As March progressed, Elizabeth's condition became increasingly evident. Her pulse weakened, her breathing grew irregular, and her eyes occasionally glazed with exhaustion. Yet moments of clarity persisted. She recalled matters of state with precision, issued corrections, and asserted her will. The paradox of strength and vulnerability created an atmosphere of suspense and awe, leaving everyone in her presence uncertain of when death would arrive. The shadow of mortality pressed ever closer. Cushions became her refuge, a place where she could rest without surrendering entirely. Courtiers observed hours of silent sitting, moments of lucidity punctuated by weakness, a slow, inexorable reminder of human fragility. Elizabeth I, the queen who had seemed untouchable, now faced the inescapable reality of death, setting the stage for the dramatic final weeks that would follow. For 40 years, Elizabeth I painted her face with Venetian ceruse, a lead-based white makeup meant to preserve her youthful appearance. Every morning, she applied the pale powder to hide age and project power, unaware that each layer was slowly poisoning her from within. Lead seeped into her body, building up over decades, silently attacking her health. The effects were gradual but devastating. Her hair thinned, her teeth decayed, and tremors began to shake her hands. Fatigue weighed on her, and even simple tasks became exhausting. Over time, the Queen's once razor-sharp mind showed signs of decline. She sometimes forgot names, misremembered details, or became irritable without cause. These were the hidden consequences of a beauty ritual that had long been considered essential to royal appearance. Physicians of the day could do little. Herbal remedies, poultices, and bloodletting offered no relief. The very substance meant to enhance her image had become a slow-acting poison. Each application reinforced her public authority while secretly undermining her body, creating a cruel paradox. The more she hid the effects of age, the more vulnerable she became. Lead poisoning also intensified other ailments. Her skin became fragile and prone to infection, her bones ached, and digestive issues plagued her. These cumulative effects were invisible to onlookers, yet they left her body weakened and fragile. Even in public appearances, moments of trembling or hesitation betrayed the long-term toll of her rituals. By the time her final weeks arrived, the signs were undeniable. Tremors shook her hands as she wrote, her skin appeared waxen beneath the heavy makeup, and her energy drained rapidly. 40 years of devotion to appearance had left Elizabeth I a queen whose power remained unchallenged, but whose body had been silently destroyed, setting the stage for the tragic and horrifying final days that would await her. In the final weeks of her life, Elizabeth I grew increasingly isolated. The corridors of Whitehall, once bustling with courtiers and petitioners, felt empty and tense. Only a handful of trusted attendants, advisors, and physicians were allowed near her chambers. Their presence was both a comfort and a source of anxiety, as each visitor could witness the slow unraveling of England's most powerful monarch. She met with her closest confidants in private, speaking in measured tones but revealing the weight of her fears. Questions about succession, state affairs, and the kingdom's stability filled the conversations. Yet beneath the surface, a deeper tension lay. Elizabeth wrestled with the inevitability of death while desperately holding on to control, both of her body and her court. Among those at her side were William Cecil's successors, Sir Robert Carey and Archbishop Whitgraft. They observed the Queen's frailty firsthand, the tremors in her hands, the pallor of her skin, and the faltering breath, but also her enduring sharpness. Elizabeth could shift seamlessly from moments of confusion to bursts of precise authority, reminding all who watched that even in decline, she remained a formidable ruler. The Queen's moods fluctuated unpredictably. At times she was calm and reflective, issuing directives and giving counsel with clarity. At other moments, she grew silent or agitated, staring into space for hours. Her attendants learned to tread carefully, never pushing too hard, yet always alert to her needs. Every interaction was a delicate balance between service and vigilance, as they sensed the fragility of the woman who had once dominated the political stage. These final confidants were witnesses to history in the making. They saw a monarch confronting mortality, a sovereign negotiating the limits of her own body, and a ruler clinging to her legacy. Their observations, later recorded in letters, reports, and chronicles, provide some of the most vivid accounts of Elizabeth's last days. It was among these trusted figures that the Queen's vulnerability was revealed, and yet, paradoxically, her enduring authority continued to command respect and fear. In these moments, Elizabeth I's human side was undeniable. The great Queen, whose name had inspired awe across Europe, now relied on a few loyal individuals to navigate her final days. The trust she placed in them and the glimpses of fragility they witnessed foreshadowed the dramatic events that were soon to follow: her defiance of rest, the slow surrender to death, and the horror that awaited the court and the kingdom alike. Elizabeth I refused to lie in her bed. For 4 days and nights, she remained on floor cushions, silent and immovable. Courtiers and attendants watched in horror, unsure whether to intervene or respect her stubborn will. Her body was frail, trembling with weakness, yet her mind clung to the desperate conviction that if she lay down, she would never rise again. Hours turned to days as she remained seated, silent and unyielding, while those around her waited for the inevitable. The hours turned to days as she remained seated, silent and unyielding, while those around her waited for the inevitable. The tension in the room was unbearable. Her household was caught between reverence, panic, and helplessness. Her insistence on remaining upright revealed more than stubbornness. It was psychological and symbolic. To lie down, to rest fully, was to acknowledge the inevitability of death. Yet even as her strength waned, she maintained control over her environment. Attendants noted how she arranged her cushions, how she demanded precise care, and how she navigated the small space around her with careful deliberation. The 4 days on the floor became a spectacle of human fragility and royal authority intertwined. Elizabeth's refusal to lie down, combined with the visible effects of chronic illness and decades of lead makeup, created a tense, almost unbearable atmosphere. Those who witnessed it would later describe the scene as tragic, surreal, and haunting, a monarch confronting mortality in the most unsettling, prolonged way.
After 4 days on the floor, Elizabeth I was finally persuaded to lie in her bed. She moved slowly, her body weak and trembling, her hands shaking as attendants guided her onto the sheets. The chamber was silent, heavy with anticipation, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Those present could feel the end approaching, a moment that had been feared and awaited for weeks. Her breathing grew shallow, uneven and labored. The queen spoke little, murmuring instructions in fragments, her voice barely above a whisper. Physicians checked her pulse repeatedly, noting the decline that no treatment could reverse. Every shift in her chest, every faint exhale, was a reminder that Elizabeth's formidable life was nearing its conclusion. Attendants watched with quiet dread. Courtiers and chambermaids had grown accustomed to her strength and commanding presence, yet now they confronted vulnerability in its purest form. The legendary Virgin Queen, who had outlived rivals, wars, and political intrigue, lay weakened, mortal, and utterly dependent. Her defiance had ended, and in its place came a fragile stillness, broken only by the occasional sigh or whispered word. Elizabeth's eyes, once sharp and calculating, now reflected fatigue, confusion, and fleeting moments of lucidity. She attempted to maintain her dignity, adjusting the covers and speaking instructions for state affairs, even as her body failed. It was a striking mixture of human vulnerability and enduring authority, a final reminder of the woman who had ruled England with unmatched skill. As the night wore on, her breathing slowed further. The attendants and physicians, though anxious, remained composed, understanding the gravity of the moment. Elizabeth I passed quietly in the early hours, marking the end of an era. The queen who had inspired awe, commanded nations, and survived countless threats, now surrendered to the inevitability that no power could resist. Her death was both tragic and monumental, signaling the close of the Tudor age and leaving a kingdom poised between grief, uncertainty, and the weight of history. After Elizabeth I passed, the chamber was filled with a heavy, somber silence. Attendants and physicians carefully moved to prepare her body, performing the rituals necessary for a Queen of England. Washing and dressing the corpse was meticulous work, aimed at preserving dignity while concealing the inevitable signs of decay. Layers of clothing and lead-white makeup were adjusted, ensuring that her familiar appearance endured even in death. The goal was to present the Queen as lifelike as possible, a symbol of authority and majesty, masking the frailty and deterioration that her body had endured in private. Each careful motion reflected both devotion and fear. Devotion to the monarch, fear of the reality her death now represented. Physicians checked her pulse repeatedly, noting the decline that no treatment could reverse. Every movement in her chest, every faint exhale was a reminder that Elizabeth's formidable life was nearing its conclusion. The preparations extended to her hair, jewelry, and accessories. Every detail was attended to, from folding her hands to arranging the folds of her gowns, creating a semblance of the Queen's elegance and control. Even the coronation ring, which had become embedded over decades, required careful attention to remove and polish. In these final hours, the household performed their duties with quiet reverence. The contrast between the lifelike effigy they were creating and the reality of the Queen's frail, fragile body beneath was stark and unsettling. Elizabeth's preparation for burial became a delicate balance between appearance and truth, a haunting reminder that even the most powerful sovereigns could not escape mortality. Elizabeth's body was placed into a lead-lined coffin, sealed tightly to preserve her form for the funeral. The coffin was heavy, designed to protect the Queen and maintain the appearance of dignity long after her death. Those who handled it understood both its symbolic and practical importance. A monarch of England deserved a burial worthy of her reign. Even as the coffin was sealed, there were warnings of the dangers that lay ahead. Decomposition had already begun within the body, producing gases that would build pressure inside the airtight container. The attendants and officials understood the need for a secure burial, but none could fully anticipate the physical consequences of tightly enclosing a decaying body. The coffin was carried through the palace and into the streets for the funeral procession. Crowds gathered, mourning the passing of a queen who had seemed immortal for decades. The weight of anticipation hung over every step, as observers whispered about the fate of a monarch whose death marked the end of an era. Inside the lead coffin, Elizabeth's body continued its natural process of decay. Gases accumulated slowly but steadily, invisible yet powerful. The attendants, focused on the ceremonial aspects of the procession, remained unaware of the silent, unseen forces building beneath the coffin's heavy lid. The sealed coffin symbolized both reverence and tragedy. It preserved the Queen's image for posterity, maintaining the illusion of eternal composure, yet it also became a vessel for the grotesque consequences of decomposition. England's Virgin Queen, who had survived rivals, illness, and political intrigue, was now subject to the unstoppable, inevitable laws of nature, even within the grandeur of her lead-bound tomb. During the funeral procession, a sudden, terrifying sound shattered the solemnity. A deafening crack, like a cannon shot, echoed from the sealed lead coffin. Those nearby froze in horror, some stumbling back in panic. The coffin, airtight and heavy, had succumbed to the pressure of decomposition gases. Elizabeth's body had exploded within its confines. Attendants and courtiers recoiled at the sight and sound, their fear mingling with disbelief. The Queen, who had ruled England with unyielding authority for 45 years, had succumbed not only to death, but to the grotesque consequences of decay. Gas trapped inside the coffin had built until the pressure became unbearable, rupturing the lead seals and revealing the inevitable, horrifying reality beneath the ceremonial veil. Eyewitnesses described the moment with a mixture of shock and horror. The air was filled with the stench that sickened those present, a stark contrast to the carefully maintained image of lifelike preservation. The explosion was both physical and symbolic, a violent reminder that even the greatest monarch could not escape the ultimate laws of nature. For the courtiers and attendants, the scene was surreal. Months of fear and anticipation had led to this moment, and the violent rupture of the coffin marked a grotesque climax to Elizabeth's final story. The Queen, who preserved through power, ritual, and cosmetics, was now subject to the most human of processes, decay, unchecked and inevitable.